meet
So we're going to have electronic vehicles in Nigeria.
Public buses. Public buses.
Oh.
BRT, some of the...
Yes, electronic public buses, actually, to clarify that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll still ask a few more. We'll dig deeper a bit later. But Aderonke, before we go into the loss and damage fund and the rest, it would be good to have an understanding of the legal framework for climate change and carbon credit in Nigeria. Just help us understand how that works, regulators and all.
Okay, Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris Agreement. And as a result of Nigeria's commitments to contribute to climate change, sometime in 2021, I think November, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Climate Change Act into law. So that's the primary framework for the climate environment in Nigeria. But I also know that under the Climate Change Act, National Council for Climate Change was constituted, and they have the primary obligation to ensure that all the obligations under the Act are complied with and that the Act is also enforced. I do know that the Council issued emissions trading scheme framework sometime last year. I'm not sure if anyone on this panel has have you had the opportunity to read it? I haven't. I've looked for it, I haven't. But I do know that it was issued, and what this seeks to do is to ensure that there's some level of compliance by participants within the carbon market. The scope of the Act generally, or rather the essence of the Act generally, is to make sure that companies, both the private and public sector, treat the environment differently. It is to ensure that we're investing resources, both financial and human capital, into ensuring that we treat our environment better and just basically, reducing carbon emission in the Nigerian ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So now, I want us to get more practical. So the audience leave with something that connects with them. They see their opportunities in this. Now, Tenny, at COP27, it ended with the loss and damage fund was considered to be a historical decision that came out of COP27. And the carbon credits, the commitment to scale carbon credits. Now, can you tell us how this works in practice? Help us understand the fund and how it relates to people here.
Okay. So the loss and damage fund was EU focused. The EU were the ones that actually brought about it, and they supported and proposed this fund. And it was just so that countries with higher emissions will have to compensate the vulnerable countries suffering from climate impacts. That's it in a nutshell. So therefore, it goes back to what I had mentioned earlier. Those who were the higher emitters pay for the damage they caused to the developing countries. And now, they've now tried to streamline it that it must be clear on what you are actually compensating. And so the loss and damage fund was proposed by the EU, and it was finally accepted. The US is now on board. And it would not, it's still in talk stage. Well, actually it's past concept stage. Now there's created a transitional committee that was set up in March, and they're going to have their first meeting in March, which is next month. And it's all in preparation so that it will all be ready by COP28, which is happening in Dubai. And so it's great news. It's what we've all been wanting, but it's good to actually solidify it and put it in form of a fund. In the past, in COP27, COP26, it was always the countries have to pay. Some countries in the EU were paying, but not formally arranged. Now, with the Loss and Damage Fund, it's a formalization of this climate injustice and compensation will have to be paid. Now, what does it mean for countries like us? It's a tremendous start to a better future for us. This problem, as Dr. Dolapo has said, is something for all of us to bear the brunt of, even though we didn't all bring this upon ourselves, but it's something that affects everybody. So the Loss and Damage Fund would be something that would be in the right direction. What it would mean is, I know that I think it was a rough amount of $200 million have to be allocated to these countries every year. They're still finalizing the total amount, but it needs to now be clear how much needs to be pumped into these developing countries, and it will be in the form of renewable energy projects and things to assist in the improvement of the catastrophes that have happened in these countries. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. But just to drill a bit down into that, so projects, what kind of projects stand to benefit from the Loss and Damage Fund in Nigeria? People doing what?
Projects that will help to improve the environment. So just like, clean cook stoves, that's been one of the main ones. And that is a substitute to firewood. So for instance, energy efficiency as well, just as Debo, pardon?
Planting trees.
Yeah, planting trees. So there's so many, they're like main sectors: energy efficiency, clean cook stoves, planting of the trees, even just capacity building alone, and then the recycling, there's so much. So it's a wide range of products.
Thank you so much. So naturally, we'll move to Dr. Fashawe because she's representing government. So tell us, in practical terms, these projects, are there opportunities for people, for businesses in that sphere?
I like that question. There's a $22 billion industry in green funds. Green funds means circular economy, carbon credits, just living green and protecting the environment. What do I mean by $22 billion? Let's start from little things in our homes. Do we know that we actually practice carbon trading in Lagos, albeit informally? La Sepa is a champion of that. We have a project called Cash for Trash. We buy your empty bottles, plastic bottles from you, because they are not degradable and they emit greenhouse gases. Say a dustbin bag of empty plastic bottle costs 40 naira. The governor has magnanimous allowed us to use taxpayers' money to buy it from you at 150 naira or something like that. And that's just from the basics. Now, if you're manufacturing or you're producing on a large scale, like he did, say, NNPC and Total had a joint venture a few years ago, and that's the only formal carbon trading business I found when I was doing my desk review. They made $1 million just from capturing gas instead of leaving it into the air. The money is there. Think of something that will reduce carbon footprints. Think of something that would clean up the environment, like changing from cooking with firewood to gas, like moving from, let's talk about Tesla. Tesla moved from fossil fuels to electrical vehicles. Do you know how much money that company made just because they were trying to improve the environment, the ripple effects? And people are converting plastic, old tires into pavement stones now. All of these things is towards a greener economy. And very soon, Lagos State, this state, will start to pay carbon credits for every ton of carbon you remove from the atmosphere. Now, how do we measure a ton of carbon? And how do we measure how much we'll pay you? I'll just use a random example. Your vehicle in 3 months emits a ton of carbon, which is a carbon credit. Now, how much is this worth? Is different in different climes. It could be worth $1,000, it could be worth $10,000. And you say, okay, I'm converting my vehicle to electrical, and there it is, $10,000 for you. That is what the economic fund is about, and that is what trading in carbon is about. However, we need lawyers, we need a legal framework to guide and guard the process.
Thank you. Thank you. Adirunke, so from what Dr. Fashawe has said, there has been an informal way of trading in carbon credits previously, but it was happening, and now with this commitment by Nigeria, government will have to formalize it more. What are the different types of carbon, what are the different carbon markets out there in other jurisdictions? What's your advice to the government and on how to go about having a more formal carbon market system in Nigeria?
Okay, to answer your question as to the types of markets that we have, there's the voluntary carbon markets and there's the compliance markets. And just as the name implies, the voluntary carbon markets involves people like you and I, institutions like you and I, coming together to say, okay, you know what? There's actually an available opportunity here. Let's work together. Let's contract. Let's agree on how we're going to run our markets. Let's exchange credits with each other. And then somebody, the counterparty, gets benefit from it. And it's largely unregulated. The compliance market, on the other hand, involves either a regulatory authority or a national authority or international authorities coming together to say that, you know, nations or organizations have to comply with regulations or have to comply with guidelines or stipulations. So a typical example from my research is in the EU, there's the emission trading scheme, just like the one we have in Nigeria, whereby permits. So essentially, in very simple terms, what it means is they're issuing you permits to be able to pollute the market, but that permit is capped at a certain level. So maybe, as Dr. Fashawe gave an example of 1 ton of carbon, whatever, 1 ton of carbon, they could tell you, okay, all of you who are producing, let's say all the oil and gas companies who are generating green gas or emitting green gas should only emit 10 carbons a month. And therefore, you are given a permit to only emit green gas of 10 tons a month. And once you have exceeded that cap, you basically have to buy credits. So I have to go to Sharm, who runs in ExxonMobil, or I have to go to Dr. Fashawe of NNPC to say, hey, you haven't used up your credits for this month or for this period. Can you sell your remaining 2 tons to me? So that's the way the market works.
And what's your advice to Nigeria? What kind of market do you feel Nigeria in implementing its commitment at COP27 it should adopt?
I think by and large, I think both markets to start with, because like the first question you asked was, what has carbon credit got to do with us? So in the private sector, individuals recognize that there's a benefit, and not only is there a benefit, there's also the risk of what happens in the future when, you know, the ozone layer continues to deplete. What happens is that it has an impact on our everyday lives. It has an impact on ability to feed yourselves. Food becomes expensive. There's potential drought. So as organizations, right, this is not the government aside, as organizations, as individuals, we need to recognize the potential of either the damage that can be done or the benefits that we can gain from it. Now, from the government's perspective, obviously, if we have an emission trading scheme that is similar to that of the European Union, then we have to take it seriously. I think if you compare to other jurisdictions like Denmark, Finland, they take climate change extremely seriously. And that's also because if you look at their legal framework, not just as regards climate change, but generally speaking, crime rate is extremely low. Civil offenses rate is extremely low, primarily because taxes are high, and the regulatory framework is particularly punitive and is expensive. So you essentially don't have a choice. You have to comply, right?
Okay.
So yeah, advice
Okay.
to Nigerian governments, take it seriously.
I think from my experience in Lagos State, enforcement, I mean with Africans really, enforcement, stringent taxes, and punitive measures are things that will work. The problem with hybriding both solutions is lack of knowledge. A lot of us, even I, before now, did not know the implication of climate change and global warming. But if we enact laws that will punish us for emitting, I mean, a car on the road smoking has not committed any offense in Lagos, and we can all see it. Meanwhile, a car with 4 boys with face cap and earrings, the police is quick to stop them. So compliance, I think if you lawyers are thinking about it, is the best way to go for maybe sub-regional governments for now, and then we scale it up.
Thank you, thank you. So Adebisi, I'm going to ask you a question, but for everyone here, what I want you to understand is that with carbon credit, when there's a company, just to break down a few things my panelists have said, with an ExxonMobil or any of the companies that are notorious for greenhouse gas emissions, now since they still continue to produce these things and deplete the ozone layer, there's now an opportunity for companies into renewable energy, into clean, what do you call it? Clean
energy.
Clean energy. Any of you, so it's not just an NMPC or the big companies. If you have a project that is cleaner, you have an opportunity to get grants. To get grants because you are into cleaner energy projects. And the companies stand to benefit from you because they then use you to kind of balance out what they're doing. So I encourage you to look for those grants. I just want to throw that there. But as I'm saying that, I'm looking at ADBC. Now, the energy sector, as I've said, there's a big risk of greenhouse gas emissions. So are there funding opportunities, like I've just said to everyone, for green initiatives?
Okay. Yes, so there's a lot of funding opportunities for green initiatives. I'm aware, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll call some names.
Yeah.
Access Bank, for example, has raised a green bond, and the whole green bond is meant for, green projects or energy efficient projects. The African Finance Corporation also has a climate resilience fund, which is dedicated to, climate resilient projects. And it's in the billions of USD, so it's a lot of money to deploy, but it has to be for infrastructure. And then we also have a lot of multilateral institutions and development finance institutions. and their focus is really projects that have some social or environmental value, to the society. And you have a lot of them: World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, the Green Climate Fund, and the rest of them. So there's a lot of funding in that space, and a lot of financiers too, to manage their own risk. They actually have to fund, green projects, because there's something they call the transition risk. So with time, fossil fuel, projects or projects that are exposed to physical climate risk, would be so risky, either they can't invest in them anymore, or investments in them would, pose an existential threat to the institutions funding this thing. So, and you need to think about it from the way, where's the energy conversation flowing towards, and that's renewable and clean energy. And so there's a lot of opportunities there in terms of funding or raising funds.
Okay. Are there opportunities in your company? Or is that a secret?
Okay, so in my company, we are looking into clean energy, very much. It's something we are focusing on at the moment. And I know the project I mentioned with Lagos State government, for example, is to replace, buses with electronic buses that have zero emissions, actually. And then you also have to think of, we're also thinking of other projects. There are geothermal projects, for example, where you use existing oil wells that have been drilled to a point in the earth that is hot enough to use, to generate some electricity. And you have, other projects you're also looking at to, wind energy, solar energy, which are the usual suspects when it comes to renewable energy. So there's a lot of work going on. Much of it might not be seen for months, but a lot of conversations and work is going on behind the scenes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So I'm going to throw it to the audience now. Do you have questions?
Sorry, I just wanted to add something to what he had said. Thank you so much for that. In terms of the list, there were two other, in case people are looking at where else they can access funds for this. The international organizations, and particularly the embassies, are very, very, very vocal on the programs that have to do with renewables and climate energy and projects in that. The US Embassy in particular has a very robust fund for clean energy projects, as well as the Dutch Embassy, Netherlands, as well. Thanks.
Thank you. So there are funding opportunities. We'll take the question from the gentleman over there.
Good afternoon. My name is Olumide Ido. Actually prepared.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
My name is Olumide Ido.
Olumide, okay.
Lagos. I just have a couple of questions. And to also understand the context of issue of carbon market, carbon credit. I remember very well in COP21, that is 2015, in Paris Agreement. We talked about the issue of green bond. And when the green bond came into Nigeria, it's approximately $63 million was, said that they are going to inject into the market. But 2015 to 2023, we don't even see the reflection of that money. And I'm throwing this back to the private sector because at COP26, I was able to understand that private sector have a lot of things to do when it comes to capturing carbon credits and issue. But the problem we are having presently is when there is a framework, when there's a plan, we get to see that everything missed in this space. And that is why you see that activists always complain about private sectors, that they are disturbing the environment. And if you remember again, $63 million was supposed to also be part of the support from private sector, that is $1 billion for the cleanup in Ogoni. If I calculate my age now, and when cleanup has been going on, nothing has been done. And we keep saying that it's the private sector that is causing this problem. What I just want to understand here, because if we keep talking about carbon credit, a lot of us don't want to even listen to carbon credit. We talked about loss and damage last year in COP. What is what kind of project are we looking at? We are looking for a project that is locally driven. I cannot come to Orlando today now that I want to do a cleaner energy in Bariga. You will not listen to me. You will never listen to me. So my question now is, how do you approach local driven projects? I'm able to also do what? Carbon credit. So that all these things can come to a sustainable report for all the private sector. They will not keep telling you you are the one, causing a disaster to the environment. Thank you very much.
Did you understand the question?
Yes, I understand the question.
Okay.
So the truth is that projects are being funded on a daily basis. I remember last week or a couple of weeks ago, a fund called Africa Infra Plus Fund listed a Carbon Plus Fund on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And I mean, when I researched further, what did they invest in? They invested in power plants, which essentially replaced multiple diesel generators being used, by a state government. And if you look at it from that perspective, they probably considered over 20 projects to select that one project. So the truth is that you need projects which actually, fulfill certain metrics and are also bankable, because at the end of the day, everyone is in business to make some money. And so in terms of projects, in terms of funding projects, in terms of funding green energy projects, the fact that the money is there doesn't mean the projects are there or that you have people that are technically skilled to implement those projects. So those are some of the challenges. And I think with workshops like this, where people are educated and about these issues, some improvements would eventually come about.
I hope he helped, but I would encourage you to speak directly to him right after to break it down more. Or any other person on the panel.
In addition to what he has said, see, to get funds to run projects, simple things occur simply. I know someone who has gotten $1 million just because she converts pure water paper to slippers. $1 million. She has a big industry in Oyo State, in Ibadan, from the American Embassy. Now, we're still going to exotic things. All the banks, all the multinationals, all the companies that have a reputation to protect in Lagos State now have a department called Sustainability, Environment, Sustainability and Governance. And a certain percentage of their funds must be spent on projects and programs, small, medium scale, and large. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I should be proud or ashamed to say, they even support government. They have supported us on a couple of our projects. When we give out free gases, free cylinders, a certain company pays for that, not only taxpayers' monies. So let's look out there. There's sustainable banking. It's a law, if I believe. Yes.
So there's a guideline on sustainable banking.
Yes, and a certain percentage of their turnover must be given to people like you and I to run programs in protecting the environment. So go look for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, please? Okay.
Very much. Morning all, afternoon. My name is Bakar Tukur, and my question goes to the CEO of the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. As we all know, we are transitioning towards a digital economy, and by the day, our connectivity increases.
We can't hear you.
Okay, my
Is it the mic?
Can you hear me now? So I said, as we continue to grow, like in terms of the digital economy, in terms of connectivity, so does our footprint also electronically. Like these devices, we know they have a short life cycle. I just want to know, has Lagos State government implemented any policy or regulation in managing electronic waste? Or what direction is the state government headed in trying to curb the rising amount of electronic waste? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you came in, we spoke about things that cause global warming. And some of these things that come from electrical and electronic waste are very, very big culprits. As a matter of fact, when we release gases from our ACs, it goes straight to the ozone layer. A particular gas has been banned, hydrofluorochlorothiazide. It is not used in ACs anymore. But there's a law for electrical and electronic waste management in Lagos State. It has been ignored for a while, but my agency, LASEPA, is very serious with it. Go to our website, lasepa.gov.org. We have an e-waste unit, and all electrical and electronic waste managers in Lagos are accredited by LASEPA. We have laws, section 92 of LASEPA 2021 law, states that all these things at the back there, computers, batteries from telcos, have to be disposed of responsibly in an environmentally sustainable manner. And the best way to do that and make money from it is recycling. Those things you are holding, there are precious metals inside. There's urban mining. There are buildings in Lagos, in VI and Ikoyi, where the Chinese people are mining these things and exporting them at our expense. Yes, there's a market for e-waste. Check it out on our website, and you'll see what we do.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question. We have about 3 minutes left, so please, I need you to keep it short.
Thank you very much. My name is Amidu Mohamed. My question goes thus. You said there is a sustainability unit almost every reputable institution. So a lot of young people are going into recreating the old design space. Let's use the interior design industry as an example. It's a material-intensive space. And for the past decades till present, about 70% of the materials used in this space are unsustainable. They operate on a linear economy model, make, use, dump. So, using myself as an example, I run a startup called Plastic Build Solutions, and what we do is we are trying to redefine interior design the eco way. 96% of Nigeria's forest cover has been lost due to deforestation. Furniture accounts for over 70%.
Okay.
So, we are now
What's
bringing...
the question? Sorry.
The question now is, most of the corporate organizations you talk about, they are reluctant to accept this new process because it's disrupting what they are used to. How is the government helping us, startups, entrepreneurs that are intending to go secular and environmental, make the solution?
Okay.
Thank you.
So how is government going to help startups who are trying to
thank you very much for that
improve
question.
the environment?
The governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, just set up a sustainability and circular economy roundtable, which I am vice chairman of. If you look at these chairs we're sitting on, most of it is covered by Ankara and all those things. It's innovation. Very soon it will be compulsion that we recycle plastic, for example. Lafarge takes all our waste. In LASEPA, we say everybody's waste is somebody's raw material. Lafarge, for example, will take any type of waste, vegetal, plastic, metal, push it together and heat their furnace up to about over 1,000 degrees centigrade to melt silica to cement. That's circular economy. And whatever you're doing, just be diligent at it. Keep doing it, and somebody would notice someday.
I think that's a great place to end this panel session. I hope you've been left with a lot of enlightenment. You've been enlightened about carbon credits, and you're encouraged to go clean. Thank you all.